Wednesday, May 10th, Smart Growth Committee meeting to order with myself, Patrick McCoy, and Lisa Dorsey, who is currently on the call as well. And this meeting began at 6:12 p.m. Eastern Time. Are there any comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda?
I'm sorry, I'm having to leave them. Okay, sorry, Kevin. I have stayed to ask about community gardens. A neighbor of mine, Nathaniel Smith, has requested something that I think is very worthwhile. He would like the borough code to allow community gardens as an acceptable use or special exception in areas zoned residential. Community gardens would be defined as beds provided for community members to grow vegetables and flowers, excluding commercial agricultural operations and raising animals. The East End neighbors want to engage in growing plants, not cultivating commercial agriculture. And I think community gardens are important. Our borough deserves them. Whatever rules are currently on the books are probably something that go way back to a different time, and excluding the use of individual plots as gardens seems out of date at this point. That was my addition, not Nathaniel's. But I would just like to ask this committee to consider doing that so that the council at large can vote on it, and then we can move forward with allowing community gardens in our community. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, any other comments? Okay, let's move to discussion items. Consider solicitor attendance for zoning appeal number 1003 of 334 West Gay Street. Applicant seeks relief from section 112-307B to permit construction of an addition to an existing single-family attached dwelling.
Yeah, so the applicant, they submitted a building permit application for an addition. During the review process, we determined that they already had a non-conforming lot of building coverage. They're already over their building coverage. The addition is going to push that over even further. So we require them to go for a variance in order to build this addition. The increased building coverage there. I can pull it up here if you bear with me for 1 second. So they are currently at 47%. They're allowed 45. And they're going to go to 56%. So it's a dimensional variance, something typically we don't send the solicitor for dimensional variances. That would be my recommendation.
Are there any questions regarding item A?
I have no questions.
Any questions from the audience regarding item A? Okay, let's move forward with item B, discuss private curbside electric vehicle charging.
I'll let Will jump in here briefly.
Good evening. We've had a lot of conversations internally about EV charging. Obviously, very dynamic field, a lot going on, changing as rapidly as you can wrap your head around how fast it's changing. And we wanted to kind of kick off what's going to be a multi-month process of different sort of initiatives and policies we want council to weigh in on. I want to start by really quickly just reminding everyone why EVs are great. 80% roughly, it depends on the model, obviously, and how you're fueling it. But suffice to say, there's about 80% reduction in life cycle emissions from driving an EV. Zero tailpipe emissions, meaning if you're driving in Westchester, you're not contributing to air pollution. Lower total cost of ownership versus comparable models, although EVs still have a reputation for being more expensive. Just a reminder that in 2018, Borough Council approved very ambitious clean energy goals that called for 100% clean electric transportation by 2050 in the borough. So that's what we're pursuing. A couple things, like I mentioned, this is part one of a multi-part conversation. Some of the things we're going to touch on are our own fleet, electrifying that, and the charging infrastructure we need to do so. A EV-ready ordinance, which will dictate a number of spaces, depending on the development type, number of spaces that will need to be set up to easily install EV charging in the future. That's EV capable, and EV ready, which is the number of spaces that actually have charging stations installed as part of the land development. Public charging stations at community points of interest, and then privately owned curbside charging. And that can be publicly accessible by a company like a ChargePoint could install those, or privately installed by residents. And that's what we wanted to start with tonight, that last item. Billy, go ahead to the second slide there. So this is what we're talking about. This is an actual installation in Westchester. I'm going to let Kevin speak to this, but again, what we want to talk about and really get this committee and, if necessary, all of council's opinion on how to proceed on these. But this is an example of privately owned charging station installed in the right of way in the borough of Westchester. So Kevin, do you want to talk about this?
So, I guess 6 months ago, we were approached by this resident at 505 South Walnut, and they asked if they could install a curbside charging station for their electric vehicle because they do not have off-street parking at their residence. After reviewing it, we didn't have any regulations on the books to prohibit it. We required the property owner to obtain an electrical permit to install the charging station, which comes from their electric on their property. And it was done safely, so there's no tripping hazards, no cord running across the sidewalk. We did ask the property owner, though, to remove that sign from the borough's pole because it is not a designated EV charging station. That is a public parking space on the borough street. The property owner was informed that they do not have exclusive rights to the parking space, that if there is a non-electric vehicle parked there, then there's nothing we can do to tell them to move. It was simply for him to have the benefit of charging his vehicle if it was available. So that's, like as Will said, we want to get some guidance, and it's really a policy decision for Borough Council on whether or not we want to allow residents who don't have off-street parking spaces to install these. There's pros and cons to it, obviously. People may think that they can't park there because it's an EV charging station. And then you have the electric running in there. You have a private utility running into a right of way, which could provide some other complications with road maintenance, snow plows, things of that nature. So we wanted to just get this in front of the committee at this point in time to just get some feedback and direction of where Borough Council would like to go with this.
Thank you. I'm familiar with that property. I've walked up and down that block a couple of times. And my question is, if we do this on every street, then would we need some type of parking ordinance that would prohibit people from parking there? Number one. And number two, if we didn't, then what's going to guarantee those people that space?
Right. So I'll follow up on the latter point you made. Nothing's going to guarantee that space, and that's what we advise this gentleman of. I don't think it would be advisable to put an ordinance in place that if there's a private charging station that public can't park there because it is a public road. So I don't think you're gonna reduce the number of parking spaces that would be off street, or I'm sorry, on street parking spaces that would be available to other residents. I think it would just, if it's available for the electric vehicle to use, then it's available for them to use. If somebody else is parked there, then they'll have to charge it another time.
So this is a universal problem. I'm sure others,
It-
other municipalities, cities, New York City, whatever, have they figured out how to solve this issue?
I think that would be a question for Will, because it's not in my wheelhouse. As far as the borough goes, it's not a universal problem here. This is the only request that we had to have one installed permanently. We had one resident up on North Walnut who had one temporarily installed just while they were having some renovations done to their house and garage area. But it wasn't the same situation as this.
Yeah, I don't think it's going away, though. I mean, I'm surprised it's the only request. I'm sure there will be more in the future. So, I mean, I'm glad you're starting to talk to us about it and figure it out. I also recall that there was, just side note, we had Wiley, Jim Wiley.
Yes.
He came and talked to us about an ordinance for new developments for EV ready, capable, et cetera. I'm not sure where that is, but it's part of this whole discussion ultimately.
Yeah, Will mentioned that earlier in his brief introduction. That's going to be phase two. We're still going to work on that EV ready ordinance there. And I think we're going to do solar ready as well, right? EV and solar ready for new construction and new developments.
I think that makes sense for new construction and new developments, but the impact that this could potentially have on parking, and again, there's going to be no guarantee that a resident will be able to charge their car. That's another concern, and that could give a false expectation to those residents.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Mr. McCoy, right? This is not going away. Council, I think Will Williams made a point of the ordinance that council passed in 2018. We've got to figure out how we can do this. And I'm just curious, Kevin, like when we approved this space for this resident, and you said, there are other things to consider around street sweeping, plows. Did we make an exception for that, for this space?
No, so we didn't make a blanket exception. We didn't have anything to prevent him from doing it. And this is kind of something that's evolving over time here, and then we're trying to get ahead of so that we can put some guidance in for future requests. And again, this space is not exclusively reserved for this property. So if you wanted to go park your gasoline vehicle there, you could.
Yeah, I guess I'd be interested to gather some data around how other cities have rolled this out, because it's a much bigger issue that we have to solve for.
How long has this been here?
6 months, maybe.
What's been his experience so far?
I don't know. I haven't followed up with him.
I mean, it'd be interesting to hear from
Yeah.
him. I mean, but yeah, I think we need to hear some other model, locations that have done something. I don't know whether it's, you incorporate it into streetlight poles or whatever. And I know with the IRA money, I think there's some money for, I don't know if it's just research, but there's at least a push for EV infrastructure. So I don't know if that's something we can, get some money for at least exploring it. Maybe even Remington Vernick has some recommendations as our traffic consultant.
Are there any other
Understood.
further questions about this topic? Mayor, do you?
if another electric vehicle wanted to use that charging station, it's tied to the one property, paid for the one property. Is there a lock on it so no one else could use it?
That's a great question that I don't have the answer to. I would presume that the property owner could disconnect or turn off the electric to it so that anybody just can't pull up there. Or maybe he's a really nice guy and allows people to charge for free. I don't know.
Will?
So do you want me to bring it home? Yeah, I'm guessing they shut it off at the breaker. But we did, in discussing this, we mentioned that if the position was we didn't want to prohibit it, and we wanted to encourage that wide-scale EV adoption, then requiring that it be publicly accessible at the owner's cost would probably achieve those goals. Just to touch on a couple of things that came up, I mentioned the EV Ready ordinance. That's in the works. We have a draft that's been reviewed by the Sustainability Advisory Committee, and we said we'd put that on the agenda for this committee next month. How are others addressing it? Every which way. There are people who are being very permissive, and there are others that are prohibiting it. I mean, everything in between. In my opinion, those who are being very permissive are looking at it on a, 1 or 2 per block basis, and not envisioning a future where, there's one of these in front of every house. And that potential for something to go wrong if there's 25 on one street is 25 times higher than if there's one. So I'm not sure they're fully thinking through long-term implications of the policy, but we could pull together maybe some best practices and revisit this later. And I think it's important to talk about alternatives. I mean, if we're going to prohibit this, but we want to encourage EV adoption, we have to have another plan. And to me, that's there's 2 models, and they're not mutually exclusive. One is we deploy a bunch of plugs that we either own or partner with a third party to own and deploy, and help shoulder the cost of building those out at community points of interest like parks and surface lots and things like that. If you map those throughout the borough, no one would have to walk more than 3 or 4 blocks to get a charge. And there's another model, which is we permit this curbside, but we don't let Mr. and Mrs. Smith do it. We partner again with a qualified contractor charging provider to build those out, set aside 1 spot per block maybe to start in a select number of neighborhoods. And, they're all owned, operated, maintained by one company who we have a good relationship then, rather than, again, dealing with a homeowner and their individual electrical contractor. So there's other ways to go and make sure that we're providing a resource to get people into EVs if we decide to prohibit this outright. So I think we've got enough to next steps and bring it back to this committee.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, seeing none, discuss St. Agnes Roman Catholic Church to request to vacate Prescott Alley.
Bill, you pull up good, great, thank you. So my office received a request from St. Agnes Parish to vacate roughly a 100 and some odd feet portion of Prescott Alley or Prescott Avenue, whichever it's referred to. It's been referred to as both of those alleys. Currently, St. Agnes Parish maintains the entire portion of that alley between Darlington and New. It's wholly within the bounds of their property. It's fenced off. It's used during recess. They maintain it. They plow it, pave it. Back in 1974, the borough vacated a 300-foot section from New, and Billy, if you can pull up that map. So from New Street, which is to the left of the map, to the red triangle there, which is parcel 18230.1. That's the 300.59 feet that the borough vacated by that ordinance in 1974. And it was up to the Gonzalez property. I presume that they didn't vacate that portion because the Gonzalez's still lived there and they needed access to their property. I can only assume that that's why it was done. In 1982, the parish purchased that parcel from the Gonzalez family. So there's obviously no other homes there. In 2002, the parish submitted a land development plan to construct the building which you see at the corner of Darlington and Chestnut. And that alley, it is referenced as Prescott Avenue on the land development plan, but didn't make any mention of the vacation of that 300 feet, which was odd. But we do have an ordinance on the books that vacates that 300 feet. They are simply requesting that we vacate the rest of that, which is not utilized by any traffic. It's not for regular vehicular traffic. They have fences across it there, but there are utilities running through there. I believe there's stormwater utilities that go through there, so we would have to maintain an easement for that so we could get in there to repair any utilities that are currently in that so-called alley. And that is referenced in the 1974 ordinance.
Would that go for any future utility if we needed that for some other, future electric or?
That's a great
whatever?
that's a great question, and I don't have the answer for that. If we have an easement through there for specific utilities, the existing, I don't know if that would grant us the ability to run new utilities through there. Like if there's not currently a sanitary sewer running, I don't know, but that would be a question for the solicitor.
I have no questions or issues with it other than, potential for use for utilities.
I don't have any other questions about it, just the same concerns that Mr. McCoy had.
Yeah, if I could add maybe two questions to the solicitor's list would be, does the easement that would be needed to maintain utilities need to be defined dimensionally? I noticed in a lot of deeds, it's usually written down as a X amount wide corridor. Sometimes easements will say, will preclude building within the easement. Sometimes that's understood, but you don't want a building to be built over top of your infrastructure that's very deep, because then getting to it becomes that much more difficult. So.
Is there something that they're trying to resolve by doing this, or is it just sort of cleaning it up and making sure that it's, that it's done? I mean, it's already fenced off, it's already not used, et cetera.
It's amazing how much Kevin covered in my whole, I sat and actually spent time with everything, making sure I spelled it correctly too. You're gonna hear some of the same stuff over that I've written, but it's not that long. And it's interesting because I'm a member of the parish. Good evening, friends. My name is Bernie Flynn. I live at 313 West Minor Street here in the borough. I'm speaking to you tonight as an individual and a parishioner of St. Agnes Parish for the last 25 years. Joining us tonight is Father Louis Bellapede, the pastor of the historic St. Agnes Parish, the mother church of Chester County. Father brought along Mary Beth O'Connor, the business manager from the parish. It's our pleasure to share with you the brief but most important history of the parish and its contributions to Turk's Head and Westchester Borough. Chester County was one of the original 3 counties in Pennsylvania, and in 1682, William Penn established the Commonwealth to protect individual freedoms of religion and liberty. It was important to William Penn that individuals could worship without prosecution. In 1793, just after the Revolution, an Irish immigrant, Daniel Fitzpatrick, purchased a plot of land from John Haddam, a prominent Quaker, and built the first Roman Catholic church high on a hill in the west section of Turk's Head. The church stood for over 60 years and had approximately 150 parishioners at the time. There were 2 pews in the church, but there was a lot of standing room. It was called Christ Church. Stood proudly on Chapel Hill. The Quakers have their spot over on Marshall Street. It's called Quaker Hill. If you walk the borough, you'll know that the borough itself is pretty hilly. It was the only church in Turk's Head until Westchester Borough was established in 1799. The second church was built in 1853, and because the congregation grew dramatically, over 500 members. This was the time when they changed the name from Christ Church to St. Agnes. Fire destroyed that sanctuary. It was a beautiful old 3-spire church. It was leveled in 1924 and 25, and the current building stands as a testament of enduring preaching of the good news. Since 1792, the early 1900s, houses were built around the church grounds, and a block was formed. 20 houses circled the block, and they were divided from the parish by the right-of-way called Prescott Avenue. There were 3 houses whose front door opened onto the avenue. Knowing the parish would continue to grow, past pastors started buying the houses on Chestnut, New, and Darlington Streets. The last one, this last one to sell was on Prescott Alley. The last home was purchased in 1982 from Jose and Maria Gonzalez. During the expansion, the parish converted the area into playgrounds and parking lots for St. Agnes students that attended from 1st grade to 12th grade at that building. St. Agnes High School was the first Catholic high school in Chester County, which has later become Bishop Shanahan. Now the current time. In 1974, Westchester Borough Council vacated 300.59 feet of the avenue to the parish up to the Gonzalez's house, which leaves about 124 feet of the right-of-way unvacated. This portion of the site directly where the new gymnasium and classrooms in the building called Thomas Patrick Hall. The 124 feet still lies within the footprint of the campus. The parish is requesting that the borough vacate the 124 feet to complete the total abandonment of the avenue, and the parish has been maintaining the 424 feet right-of-way for over 50 years. The vacated avenue will allow the parish to do new repairs to all the blacktop, new lighting, and add additional safety features to protect over 350 students from St. Agnes School. And of course, Mr. Gore did what he was going to do. And if you have any questions, Father Bellapede, the pastor, will answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Are you impressed by what I've done?
You're a history major?
I had to do a lot of reading, Patrick, the last 3 weeks.
I'm impressed that you read it all, but no, that's pretty good. So, I don't have any further questions. Just to let you know, Father, I was a graduate of St. Agnes 1994. My family's been parishioners since 1985, and so I actually do agree with this. I'm very familiar with that land and that playground right there. It's not really an alley, to say the least. So, are there any other further questions regarding Item C.
None?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
All right, let's move to action items here. Approve the April 2023 Smart Growth Committee meeting minutes. And item A. Approved.
Approved.
All right, thank you. Approved. We call that 3-0. And then item B, approve the April 2023 HARB submission recommendations. We'll begin with here, the proposed work 27 South Church, and it looks like that application was tabled.
No, there's an error here.
Okay.
Bear with me a second.
No, thank you. Take your time.
You can see we had amended. Yes, sorry. This isn't the amended agenda. Number one, just disregard. We had posted an amended agenda which removed number one.
Okay, let's move on. Item 2, 23 North Church. Regarding signs and graphics, it looks like the board unanimously recommends a certificate of appropriateness for application for.
There was a hanging sign there for, that is the Pine and Quill space. No issues with that there.
Thank you. Any comments or concerns? All right, let's move to item 3, 30 South High Street. It looks like another sign, and it looks like that was approved with some options.
Yes, yeah, there was two options. One, that the hanging sign may be installed on a projecting bracket as submitted or hung directly from the pent roof above. And the hanging sign may be increased up to 3 inches in height and depth pending approval from the building code official. That the minimum clearance are met, they'll have to comply with all the zoning requirements. That'll be reviewed when they submit for their permit.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the High Street sign approval?
No questions.
Okay, we can consider that approved. Item C, approve a proclamation to declare May 2023 as Building and Safety Month.
Yes, and actually, I put this on here just as a placeholder, really more of an announcement, but the mayor has been gracious enough to work with my office to work on a proclamation that will be presented at the voting session on the 17th. So we're excited about that. I have submitted it to the International Code Council yesterday, and be shocked to know that we are only the second municipality in the Commonwealth who has submitted a proclamation for Building Safety Month to the ICC. So pretty cool.
I think that's great news. Any comments or questions regarding the proclamation?
That's great news. So is that something that's going to be, sort of put out through social media to residents and so forth? Or how is that?
Well, the mayor will do a little presentation on the 17th at the voting session. We'll put something out on the website. It's really an initiative by the International Code Council to get people aware about, bring awareness to people regarding building safety, and they do different, they have 4 weeks, it's all month long. So each week they have a different theme for building safety, and just a drive to get people involved.
Thank you. Let's move to item number 5, other business. Is there any other business? All right. Seeing none, item 6, we will adjourn this committee meeting at 6:46 Eastern Time. Thank you.